Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And, believe it or not, I don't know everything. So, we had a question, it's been several weeks now, where one of you guys asked, who was the longest serving crew member on the ship? And we estimate that there's somewhere between 40 and 50,000 people who served on the ship throughout her career. We don't even know who all of those people are. We don't have complete muster rolls, so I didn't have an answer for this off the top of my head. I didn't even know where to find the answer myself. One of my coworkers once told me that being an adult is not knowing all the answers. It's knowing who to call when you have a question. And I think that translates into being a successful historian as well. I do not have all the answers when you guys ask me a question. I'm usually the one who ends up answering the question at the end of the day. But usually I've got to go to a reference book or a veteran or volunteer or somebody who, or another historian, another museumship professional. You have no idea how often I lean on these guys, my coworkers and peers, to find the answers to some of the questions that you guys ask. So in this instance, the person I went to ask was one of our volunteers, a woman named Margaret, who has volunteered on the ship for well over 20 years at this point, since the ship first came here. And in addition to coming out once or twice a week to volunteer physically on board the ship, at home, she goes through the muster rolls and cruise books and the other documentation we have to create a database of the ship's crew. So those of you who reach out to me and like, hey, I think my dad served on board, or my grandfather, or whoever, what do you know about them? My answer is, I don't know a darn thing about them. But there is a chance that Margaret has them in her database. So I can go to her database and look through, and I might be able to find them and some basic information about their time on board. Now, her database is incomplete. We do not have all the primary documents yet to complete it, and she has not worked through all of the documents that she has, even being retired and volunteering on this as if it was her full-time paid job. So there's a chance that your relative did serve on the ship, and I just don't know about it. We don't have the documentation for that, or we haven't gotten in the database, so even if we have the documentation, we don't know that we have it. If you ask about a relative, please give us all the information you can. A name is great. Believe it or not, there's some people who don't even give us a full name. If you can give us a first, middle, and last name, that is great. If you can give us a rank or what division they're in or what years they served, that's better. A serial number is best. But if you can at least say they were on in the 1940s or the 1960s or something like that, that helps us find them. There are a lot of John Smiths out there, and there are a lot of sailors who served on this ship. So sometimes I type in a name and it's not even like a John Smith. It's something what I would think is far less common, and yet there's still 3 or 4 sailors like them. Like, this guy didn't even tell me if they served in World War II or the 1980s. I've got no idea which of these people is their relative. So going back to the original question, several weeks ago, you guys asked me. I reached out to Margaret and was like, hey, don't dedicate too much time to this question, but is the database at a point where you can Control F and find who was on board the longest? And she said no. So I was like, okay, can't answer this question. End of the day. Then yesterday, when she was on board next, she gave me this list. So some disclaimers about this list before we talk about it. This is only World War II sailors. She has done the most work with those. That is the most complete part of the database. And we have the complete muster rolls for enlisted sailors during World War II. So this list does not include Marines. It does not include officers. It does not include enlisted sailors who were serving on this ship and then got promoted to warrant officer or officer ranks. Because at that point, they're no longer on the enlisted rolls, and they're now on the officers' rolls, which we don't have a complete set of, or at least don't have it completely in the database. So again, this is just World War II enlisted sailors. And Margaret started there because she knew that there were some sailors who served on board from when the ship was first commissioned in 1943, May of 43, plank holders, to when the ship was decommissioned at the end of the war. After the end of the war in June 1948. So she knew that there were some names like that, and that meant that they were on board for close to 5 years, 5 years and a month, something like that, which is real uncommon. Typically, an assignment would be 1 or 2 years. Most of our commanding officers only served on board for 1 year. Commanding a battleship is a prestigious thing, and there were so few battleships that they often rotated those guys through pretty quickly. Our longest serving commanding officer is Captain Carl Holden, who later gets promoted to admiral. He was the ship's first commanding officer. He served throughout World War II, and that's when you tend to see exceptions. In wartime, you see a little bit less changeover than in peacetime. It's much more common to leave folks on board for the whole duration. In peacetime, when we get to the point where we're looking at the 1950s muster rolls, I will not be surprised at all if there's nobody who served on the ship for longer than 2 or 3 years. Now, the one thing I'm interested in seeing in the future, which when I say future, I mean years down the line, we don't have much in the way of 1980s muster rolls. And that is when I think there's the chance that we'll see some really long-serving sailors on board. In the 1980s, the Iowa-class battleships were the only ones with this particular steam plant and this particular main battery armament, the main guns. So many of the engineering guys I've talked to and the deck division guys I've talked to either were on the ship for a lot longer than one would expect, the 1 or 2 or 3 years, or they rotated from Iowa-class battleship to Iowa-class battleship to Iowa-class battleship, where normally you would expect to see you're on the ship for 2 years, and then you go to a shore station for 2 years, and then you might go to another ship or something else. So I'm really interested to see if any of those guys from the 1980s were on longer than the 5 years that I've got here during World War II. Obviously, Vietnam, the ship was only commissioned for a year. Some Vietnam-era guys might have served on board earlier, and some of them might have served on board in the 80s. I'm not sure for sure. But that year might add into some 1980s or some 1950s years and give somebody some time. But that's obviously not a thing. The 1950s in peacetime, I'm not expecting a thing. But the 80s would be the only time that I would expect to see something longer than what I get on this list of names here. So there's the disclaimer. This is not a full answer to the question, but here is the answer I have for you right now. I have a list here of 13 names from Margaret that served on board for all or most of the World War II commission. So first I'll start with 2 honorable mentions. Arthur Eugene Krause was on board from when the ship was commissioned all the way up until April 1st, 1948. So he missed decommissioning by 2 months before he got transferred out. Likewise, Frank Herman Magnus Stone, who has maybe the greatest name ever, was on board until 14 June 1948. So he missed being on for the full commissioning by just 16 days. The other 11 names on here all served on board from May 23rd, 1943, when the ship was first commissioned, until 30th of June, 1948, when the ship was decommissioned for the first time. So that is Albert Eugene Zettelmoyer, Thomas Edison Terry, Clarence Puckett, Lionel Nelson Jr., Rafael Maza. He gained his American citizenship while serving on board in World War II, and his family has donated much of his effects, including his diaries, which are still written in Spanish, and we hope to include them in an upcoming exhibit in the near future. John Joseph Lawrence, Harold George Koenig, Joseph Robert Joyce, Roy George Freeman, Lawrence Coopersmith, and Earl Albert Briggs. So those 11 sailors I just named were on board for the whole period. I'm not quite sure why specifically. I do not have their ranks and ratings here, although I could look them up. These, like I said, they're all enlisted sailors, but I don't know if they were all chiefs and really experienced, so they wanted to keep them here to keep continuity between the gunnery division or whatnot as other sailors are transferring out, or what ended up happening with that. Like I said, in the 80s, I'm expecting to see some long service guys, just because there's nobody else who knows how these guns work besides the guys who were trained as gunner's mates on here. And if they're not still serving on this ship, it's because they've been rotated over to Missouri or to Iowa or Wisconsin. But during this time period, there's lots of battleship gunners out there. There's lots of steam turbine operators out there. So maybe it's just because the ship goes through something like 5,000 sailors during this period. There were probably about 2,400 plank owners. So it's not out of the ordinary that... So we're looking at 0.005% of the plank holders are retained through the end. About 11 out of 2,400 sailors, rough estimate. So maybe it's just some fraction of a percentage makes it through like that. Otherwise, there's the first part of your answer to who served on board the longest. And maybe in the future, after a lot more research and able to collect more of these primary documents, I'll be able to give you a more complete answer. In the meantime, if you recognize any of those names on this list, reach out to me and let me know. We are always collecting effects from former sailors of this ship so that we can better tell their story and the story of the battleship. If you're interested in hearing battleship sailors' stories from their own mouth, on this channel there is a playlist, linked in the description below, for our various oral histories. We've collected hundreds of oral histories with former sailors who've come back to visit. If you have more questions like this for me, you can drop them in the comment section down below, or you can head over to my Facebook page and ask me there. There are fewer people on the Facebook page, so you're more likely to get a direct response from me. But remember, a large part of the time my response might be, well, I don't know. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. It's what allows me to have the free time to do this stuff. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to continue donating to support us. You can also support the museum by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about us. Thanks for watching.